So today I'm going to make a video explaining why Thomas Wolsey is my favorite English statesman, especially relating to modern period, but I don't really know any other major English statesmen, so I'm sticking with Wolsey. So yeah, let's get started. The guy is literally the destroyer from rags to riches. He was the son of a butcher from Ipswich, and he just climbed the church ladder to become what you would call, but what people at the time called an alter rex, like another king. And he, like I said, he started climbing the ladder of the church. And this is my first point. I still don't know, and I think a lot of people don't. Historians aren't quite sure how religious. Was Wolsey actually religious? Was he? Surely a little bit. Was he as religious as he should be? So the guy started being a priest, and then he kind of became bishop, cardinal. He became archbishop, papal legate, and he was in the running to become pope. I'm not even kidding, he was. His ties with Henry VIII and the divorce kind of, threw that away. And also the fact that he got sent to York and on the way back to London to stand trial, for which he would have been executed, most likely. He died, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, he was Archbishop of York. Didn't get to be Archbishop of Canterbury though. He was the papal legate. And another thing I love about Wolsey, this title of papal legate comes with a hat, right? There's a ton of paintings of Wolsey in this hat. It's red. There's pictures of his actual hat. It's red and it's huge, like with the brim red. And Wolsey was so proud of his little hat that he just needed to 100% make a whole parade, just literally parade a hat around London. Not him in a hat. No, the hat. Anyway, yeah. Cardinal, most people, when they talk about Wolsey, they talk about Cardinal Wolsey. You don't say papal legate Wolsey or Archbishop Wolsey, they say Cardinal Wolsey. And the reason why it's not because he was so power hungry that I find his climbing up the ladder of the church so interesting. It's because of his involvement in the divorce. So one of my favorite things of Henry VIII's entire reign is the Legatine Court. The Legatine Court is peak Peter history, I think. It's just the moment that really shaped English history. And I've made a bunch of videos on this, but just gonna sum it up. Well, if you know anything about Henry VIII, you know that he wanted to divorce Catherine of Aragon because he wanted a son. And there was this lady in waiting called Anne Boleyn who, seemed ideal. But before he could marry Anne Boleyn to have legitimate heirs, he needed to divorce or annul the marriage with Catherine of Aragon. And the Pope just kept on saying no. So he summoned the Legatine Court, which they sent papal legate Campeggio and alongside Wolsey, and trying to see if his arguments for the divorce stood. He presented the argument of Leviticus 20:21 that stated that in the Hebrew version that if a man were to marry his brother's widow, he would not be able to have sons. In the Hebrew version, it specified sons. And that was Henry's argument. Then Catherine of Aragon gave this amazing speech defending herself. And overall, Campeggio had a papal dispensation signed saying that the marriage would be annulled. However, he can only say, the Pope said, okay, if you want to give this papal dispensation, feel free, but only if you really see it's worth it, which he didn't. And well, Wolsey was key in negotiating the Legatine Court, but he was also used by the Pope to try and see if they should actually annul the marriage. And here it is where it gets interesting. Well, I can't remember. Campeggio arrived in London in 1528 or 1527, and the proceedings for the Legatine Court opened in 1528. It was. There was an 8-month delay between when Campeggio arrived and when the court opened. And I strongly believe this is because of Wolsey. Wolsey kept on stalling the Legatine Court and kept on trying to push it back. Something which, pissed off Henry quite a lot. And you could see this in two ways. First of all, Wolsey was trying to get Campeggio to see how he needed to give the papal dispensation, or here's the second one. This is the one I believe. He thought Campeggio would ultimately give the papal dispensation to Henry, and he didn't want that. There is also two reasons because of this. First of all, because deep inside, Wolsey was still somewhat religious, and he didn't believe that they should be able to, annul a marriage. And second of all, it's my personal favorite theory. Not favorite, it's really dumb, but I've met one or two people who agree with me. The rest have laughed in my face. And it's probably not correct, but I choose to believe that Wolsey had some feelings for Henry, and he wanted to have Henry all by himself because he knew he didn't like to pay attention to Catherine of Aragon. So if he stayed with Catherine of Aragon, he could keep Henry. But if Henry went to Anne Boleyn, he would be more involved with Anne Boleyn, and so wouldn't pay more attention to Wolsey. Now, the actual version of this is quite similar, but for other reasons. So Wolsey didn't want Henry to separate from Catherine of Aragon, and not for religious reasons and not for love, but because of political ambition. You see, Henry did not trust, he kind of ignored Catherine of Aragon, and she didn't have his ear. He ignored her. So, who did he turn to? Wolsey. However, Anne Boleyn, she brought more humanistic ideas from France because she grew up there, and she did have Henry's ear, so she had more influence on him. If Wolsey was able to keep the marriage between Henry and Catherine of Aragon, it would ensure that Henry would keep on turning to Wolsey. If he managed to get the marriage annulled, he would have to, Henry would listen to Anne Boleyn, and Wolsey would probably be pushed aside. So those are the three options. Honestly, I think it's either the religious one or the political one, but it was probably the political one. And yeah, I don't think there's much else to say in terms of the Legatine Court. Yeah, that's the peak English history, especially Tudor history, and peak Wolsey. Then, what else to say about Wolsey? Well, he really laid the foundations because Thomas Cromwell, he really gets the credit for the so-called revolution in government, but it was Wolsey who laid the foundations. He had so many courts, the Court of Augmentations and tons of other stuff, the development of the Star Chamber under Wolsey, and reducing the whole Privy Chamber. It was most likely to reduce the influence on Henry, or whatever. There was this changing the different functions of government entities that would be seen by Thomas Cromwell, in the next decade, and will be developed even further, and hence revolution or evolution. And that was all Wolsey's basis. The reason Cromwell was able to build on it is because Cromwell worked under Wolsey. from the beginning. I say beginning, but he came into Wolsey's employ around 1528, 1529, right before the fall of Wolsey. And then Thomas More, Cromwell wasn't really that involved. But anyway, let's just ignore More and Cromwell. Not really relevant. What else about Wolsey? Well, just the way he was able to control government and be able to exploit Henry's I don't care attitude towards state matters. So you have Henry VII, who he had a more hands-on approach in terms of paperwork. He would take finance stuff to his chamber and, sign stuff, look over stuff. Henry VIII, no. He believed in delegating stuff and not really having to do anything himself. But Wolsey was very proactive and an extreme opportunist. The guy, he knew, when to step in. And he would say, "Oh, sir, oh, majesty, or whatever, you have work, and I know you'd rather be jousting or rather be killing, hunting or killing the French or whatever. Why don't I just do it for you?" And he became so involved in helping Henry that instead of looking for other people, why shouldn't he just give everything to Wolsey? Think about that. And then, another thing and the last thing I want to talk about is how Wolsey was so opportunistic. It's just incredible. Well, a lot of history's great men were opportunistic, but it's just Wolsey takes the cake, honestly. So, around 1510, Wolsey was part of the anti-war party. He was against the war with the French because he saw this as an unnecessary expense, and he would kind of keep this idea going on throughout the rest of his life, because even after the first French campaign, in which England won, everyone and something else, anyway, they won 2 towns. Wolsey described them being not that impressive, and the whole Battle of the Spurs, Wolsey said, yeah, it's a victory, but quite an insignificant one. He was very anti-war. However, he knew Henry loved war. So if he wanted to become the right-hand man, he needed to take a more pro-war stance. So he joined the pro-war party and got Henry involved with other European powers. But Wolsey, you can tell he was very anti-war, and he kind of kept true to his nation, because he was very much involved in the signing of peace treaties. Wolsey, he knew that peace and cooperation were necessary. Cooperation was key. So he knew war was costly and things needed to be ended. But yeah. And I don't think there's that much else. It's just those things that it's not much, but they're hella impressive, So yeah, I'm gonna end it there. Because there's nothing much else to say. I could talk about different aspects of Wolsey all day, but the reason why I like him so much, I've already said. Anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. So thank you for watching. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you liked it. And yeah, bye.